Good evening. Welcome to our final budget hearing of the 2023-2024 fiscal year. It is 6:30 p.m. I'm Mayor Bianca Motley-Broom. We have a full quorum present with council members Clay, Karn, Allen, and Gay. So I'm calling this meeting to order at this time. The first department we have is fire. Good evening, Chief. How are you?
Great. How are you all?
Doing well.
All right. Awesome.
So we will move on to fire administration. Questions on the org chart?
Not for me.
Chief, you got a full staff here, or you short anybody?
Short the deputy fire chief, and we are in the process of interviewing within the next couple of weeks.
Okay. All right.
Moving on to page 1, questions?
No
I guess
questions.
the salary going up, that's for the deputy fire chief? Or
Yes, sir. Yes.
Any other questions on page 1? Hearing none, we'll move to page 2.
The 5730 DP equipment, see a significant jump there.
What's the line number?
See 5730, page 1.
Yeah, that's Civic Plus. That's Quantum. I think Mr. Hicks may have added Quantum in there also.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions on page 1?
I've heard of the Civic Plus. I'm not familiar with Quantum.
And DocuSign, that's a new addition.
DocuSign too. Okay. All right.
Hearing none, we'll move to page 2. Questions?
Yes, I have one on line 526270. Chief, what is a Knox box? I looked it up in the detail, but I don't know what it is.
Well, the Knox box.
I
box
do
that
know
they
what
have
it is.
On the outside of businesses or buildings.
Yeah.
And we have them also on our trucks. And late at night, if we get a call and we have to respond and get inside of the building, rather than damaging the door, we use the Knox box to get in. So we have a key, we have a key on our trucks that will allow us to get into the Knox box on the outside of the building.
Right. Now, but why are we ordering them? Do we order them for businesses?
No, we are ordering for our trucks. As a matter of fact, the ones we have on our trucks, Knox, the company Knox, will not service them anymore. So they're going to a more secure Knox box where each individual will have a code as opposed to a key to get in.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many businesses have those in the city? Well, I mean ballpark. 2,500?
2,500.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so are businesses required to have it, or is it an optional thing?
It isn't.
It's optional if there's not 24-hour security or not someone there 24 hours.
Okay. Yeah, that's a new one. I hadn't heard about that one.
I have one more question, and that's on line 526600, workman's claim. It's gone up a little bit, and do we have anything unusual going on that's driving that up?
That's an increase on our projections, based on our projections.
This is just a projection?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions on page 2? Hearing none, we'll move on to page 3. Questions on page 3?
Yeah, the vehicle, 7590. Is that one vehicle or two?
I think
The
that was the
139,000.
That's a new, that's a firehouse.
That's the firehouse.
Okay.
Yes, the fire safety house.
How old is our old house?
17 years old.
Are we gonna be able to hang on to it still, or?
No, the one we have, we're gonna probably sell it if we're allowed to get an updated one.
All right.
It's not funded, just an FYI.
I'm sorry.
It's not funded.
The firehouse?
No, yes, it's not funded.
And I'm assuming you buy those from one particular company, like normal, and they have them
I
dressed
think
out?
MES is the vendor that we're gonna buy from. They have various vendors. But this one, I know it's on the national NPP Gov, which is national contract.
I'm wondering, is there any way, well, we'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it at some other point. Okay, that answers the question.
Any other questions on page 3? Any questions on any of the supplemental pages?
Yes, I have one on electronic page 21, which is, well, it's the plans for emergency medical services, fire marshal community risk reduction goal, and we're talking about two inspections a year. One inspection from the marshal's office and one being performed by an in-service / company level inspection. Does that mean we're gonna have our firemen go out and do the inspection?
Yes, sir. We're gonna
Great.
start having them help out, because right now, we only have 2 people in the fire marshal's office. With our firefighters going out and check doing the inspections, they will familiarize themselves with the businesses. Other departments do it.
No, I can see the advantages of doing it for a number of reasons. And presumably, if they're not out on a fire,
They will help out.
they've got the time to do it.
Yes.
They're on the clock. Great, that's excellent.
Any additional questions in the supplemental documentation?
The minimum of the 18 personnel on the scene, was that always the case, or is that a new?
We've always had 18, but I know over the last few years, we've been short-staffed. Well, I think we've been running with 14, maybe 15.
I know we're gonna get to suppression in terms of your overall staff and where you're looking, I guess. How close are we to fully staffed?
I'm sorry?
I said, I know we're gonna get to fire suppression, but how close are we to fully staffed?
We're in the process of hiring 11 right now.
Okay.
So we have 11 vacancies in suppression.
All right. How close would that bring us up to? in terms
That
of-
would bring us to full staffing if we could get those 11 hired.
Okay. All right.
But mind you, I think we may have had a conversation in the past. When we do hire, it's going to take anywhere from 8 to 9 months before we're able to put them on shift.
Right.
And that's because it's 3 months of fire training, it's about 8 to 9 months of EMT training.
Okay, so those 11 will be EMT certified, some of them, or?
Hopefully some, but what we've been getting lately is maybe 2 or 3 out of the 11 that may be certified.
I wish the lack of interest. I mean, I know they get a bonus bump for that. And
For the EMT, we do not pay, give an added bonus for EMT. We do it with the paramedics, but we do not do it with the EMTs.
I thought the EMTs got some kind of a bump as well.
No, sir.
Is that something we need to look at in the future? Because I thought other outfits, other cities have the EMT bump, don't
Yes,
they?
we need to look into that.
All right.
All right, we've made the leap into fire suppression, but are there additional questions on fire administration? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and make the official move into fire suppression. Questions on the org chart?
I think we already got the answer on that.
Yep. So we'll move to page 1. Questions on page 1. I
Yeah,
have one.
I do, Mayor, I do.
All right, go ahead.
Line 51, 50, 10, and line 51, 50, 20. And I did a little analysis on this, and I want to see if I'm correct. And that is, you have a salary overtime, which you're not increasing. It was 459, almost 460,000, and you're taking it back to 250, and where I would have expected it to potentially grow to 640. But what you did, you're assuming that that's going to cover, between the two lines are going to equal out, essentially, between the two lines that I mentioned, the salary line and the salary overtime line. Is that correct?
Well, we was hoping, like I say, when we hired the 11, but I don't think that's going to help as far as with the overtime.
Uh-huh.
I think 250, I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, or the year before, it was one.
Well, you did 460 currently, right? You're at 460 right now on
Yes.
overtime.
Yes.
And we're only 3/4 into the year. So if you add a third to that, that would be 640K roughly. Okay? And you didn't add a third to that.
We did not.
So now I look up at the salary operating line and I see that you're at 2.6 million. So if I again add, let's say, 900,000 to that, that'd be 3.5 million. And you're at 4.7 million for that. So you're expecting the salary to grow, but you're expecting the overtime to go down, and they equal out. But now you just made me worry, because you said you're not going to be able to use these people for a while. So if you can't use them, won't you still be expending the overtime? And if that's the case, aren't you short?
No,
Should
I
the-
did that as far as reducing his salary over time because of the, I know the 11 recruits are paid at a reduced salary, so it'll basically make up for that difference. So that's why it's back at the
So the
250.
overtime is not, is it realistic? Okay, then, it's realistic to say that the overtime is going to drop from 460,000 down to 250,000 this year.
No,
Well, but it says that here.
it does, but basically the difference will be made up in the additional salary, the available salary that's not going to be expended. They won't expend the full salaries with the recruits, I guarantee you. If you look at 2022, it was at 510. I moved about 1.5 million because the funding from ARPA paid for part of the police and fire salary. So between the two, I should have sufficient funds to cover the salary next year.
So you've checked it out based on the lower salaries and how soon the people are coming in and et cetera, et cetera. So
Exactly.
So we're covered, we're not short.
We should be good.
I know it's strange to hear me asking whether we're
But
short.
that's exactly what I did.
Okay, all right, I'm good.
I have a question on line 515040. Employee utility credit. It appears that the amount spent has been fairly static for 2022, and 2023 is not going to go ridiculously higher than 2020. 2023 is not going to go much higher than 2022. That number doesn't seem to make sense to me.
It could change with his 11 recruits. I don't know if they'll be living in the city. Yeah, so it's just, yeah, it could change drastically if we had, yeah.
Great. If we can use that and they are living within the city, that is fantastic.
And they're spending in the city.
Amen.
Any other questions on page 1?
5017, 515017. So the EMS salary incentive pay, this is for the paramedics, I guess, incentive,
Yes,
right?
that is.
What would the EMSs in the other cities, what are they getting in terms of a bump for EMS training?
They're getting different amounts. Some are getting 12% of the salaries.
Some some are getting one-time incentives for the entire year. I know Sandy Springs, they are at $10,000 one time for the entire year. Some cities are at 15%, some between 10 and 12%.
I saw one that had like a $4,000 bump for EMS training. And my thought was, with it not being an incentive for that, this is why cadets aren't interested in it. But city manager, I think we need to take a look at this because of the fact that historically, the vast amount of our calls for fire aren't calls for fire. 70% of them are calls, medical calls. So in a sense, we're more a medical department than we are a fire department in terms of real world need from the community and citizens. So you know, if I'm a citizen, I would want every fire rookie trained in EMS because that's the vast majority of what the calls are for. And if we don't have the incentive at all, you say these 11, most of them aren't interested in the EMT training because there's no incentive for it. But at the end of the day, everybody's being called out for 70% medical calls. So something to look at in terms of, you know, our residents are going to want everybody trained in that that's coming out because 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a medical call. So I think it's something we need to look at. I don't know if there's enough money to put it into this budget, but I'd like it on the list. And to see if we could come up with something to get the ball rolling, to incentivize them to get the training, because from our socioeconomic catchment area, they're gonna need it. Does that make sense? All right.
Any other questions on page 1? Moving on to page 2.
Yes, I got a question about protective clothing, 7161, taking a huge jump.
Yes.
What all, is everybody getting new clothes,
Yes, I think we're asking for 71 sets of gear
Yeah,
over the last 4 years. And with COVID, everything's been on, I say, back order, or it's been we just hadn't been able to order the gear like we wanted to. So within the next 2 to 3 years, a lot of the gear is getting ready to expire. So we would like to get all 71 sets of gear at the same time. That way we could have a schedule when we replace them. And we replace them every 8 to 10 years.
And Chief, I want to be sure that there's the distinction. This is the turnout gear,
Yes.
the heavy gear.
Right.
You annually do the regular uniform clothing. That's in another line somewhere else, right?
so you don't have a situation where, you know, I don't know the exact numbers, where you do 10 this year and 10 the next year and 10 the next year, or how does that
We were
work?
trying to do that to give everybody a second set of gear. But like I said, over the last 4 years or so, we haven't been able to do that.
Okay. Are you gonna try to get back onto that schedule where you can?
We're gonna try,
So you don't
yes.
order them all at one time, where you, okay.
Yes.
Is turnout gear, you know, going up each and every year like with the price of everything else?
It is. Right now, if I'm not mistaken, it's about $4,100 a set.
What did it used to be, like, say, when you got here with Chief Walson?
I think it was about $2,000, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, about 2,000.
You know, I always wonder about stuff that, you know, I would have said back then, would it have made sense to buy more of that? I mean, I guess the clothing itself, the regular uniform clothing is one thing, but turnout gear is, I would imagine, a little more non-perishable than.
Yeah. Like I said, every 8 to 10 years, they don't want you to exceed 10 years with the gear. They want
Okay.
you to replace it. And that's because of all the usage, the chemicals getting on the gear. If you're washing it, I know each time you wash it, it affects the material. So that's some of the things that happens.
I guess what I'm getting at is, with some of this stuff, like helmets and things or whatever, is it cheaper to buy more now and just sock it away, and because you know you're gonna need it, and
Yeah, Yes.
At the same time, I mean, if we would have bought 71 additional pieces back then, I guess we would have saved a whole lot of money, and
Well, helmets, because they don't expire.
they don't expire.
Right, but the gear, it does.
Gotcha. Well, something to think about. I mean, I'm assuming it's not gonna get any cheaper in the future, but
Okay.
Additional questions on page 2.
Yes, I have one on 53,700, gas and oil. And we're estimating 40,100. And we're at, if you just extrapolate where we are now, we'd probably be at 3,300. So are we expecting gas and oil to go up that much? Or we're certainly not running more vehicles than we were before.
No, we're not, but I know there has been an increase with gas and oil.
Okay,
We're at 22,416 right now.
right. So
Yeah.
if you take a third of that,
Yes.
that would be 33,000.
Right.
And we've got 40,100 in there. So I assumed that he was adding in something for inflation. But oil prices are actually coming down now, or at least the last time I looked, they were coming down a bit. So I don't know. I want to make sure that he feels that that's what he's covering, that he is covering inflation on that.
Chief, where are those, I know we bought them years ago, those thermal scanners that you can see through the
What we
walls
call
and the heat
The
signature?
ticks,
is?
yeah.
How-
Thermal
how-
imaging cameras.
How are those holding up, and
Well, I think we've ordered some more since, but they're working pretty well. And it helps us out when we're going inside of structure fires.
so we don't order those every year, do we?
No, not unless one's damaged.
Okay. And how many do we have?
6.
Okay. All of them working?
I think so, yes.
All right. Okay.
Additional questions on page 2?
Nope.
Hearing none, we'll move to page 3. Any questions on the detail?
Yes.
All right.
Electronic packet, page 52, which is public safety, fire suppression, performance measures. And Chief, struck me as strange, we talk about 3-year call history. And we've got here that we've separated between fire calls and EMS calls, because we know that EMS calls have gone up and what have you, I assume. But the fire calls in 2021, or 2020 were 709. In 2021, they were 1403. In 2022, they were 2309. And those are fire calls. Those aren't EMS calls. So why would I haven't noticed that we had that many more fires.
Well, that's not just fire calls, that's other calls that we've responded to. It could be car accidents, it could be grass fires. That's what that is. It's not just us answering or responding to structure fires. That's not just structure fire calls.
But we've actually had the number of fires go up that dramatically. That's a big increase.
It could be, like I said, grass fires, it could be car accidents, car fires. We've been going on a number of car fires.
Huh. And so, just out of curiosity, in 2023, based on what you've seen so far, do you have any feeling for, is it gonna go up again this year?
I don't know if it's gonna go up.
Okay. I know that's a question you're maybe haven't thought about answering, but it just disconcerting.
Yeah.
Because it puts a lot of, we have to deploy a vehicle for that.
Correct.
And it makes me worry about, do we have enough vehicles? So, okay, thank you.
Well, Ambrose, in addition to that, if you consider how much housing stock we have on deck about to be occupied, hundreds and hundreds of units,
You bet.
plus multifamily, single family coming on probably end of this year. This number is, this is increasing at a multiple rate.
Yeah.
And the other thing, city manager, again, as this number keeps multiplying here, that's $1.50 per individual that we're not getting every single month because we haven't put together a program to make sure that when they dial 911, we get the money we're supposed to get for it so we can afford more trucks. We gotta figure out how to get that money from residents because there are too many coming in here and too many calls for us not to be getting it. And believe me when I tell you, we ain't getting it. So we need to look at that. I have a receipt from Walmart, and I'm gonna bring it to you so you can see it. It's a track phone, one of those phone purchases. And when you buy the phone, the $1.50 charge is on the receipt. It's on the receipt. I'll show it to you. So when you buy the phone, you start paying. And so it's real money, and we ain't getting it. So just
Let me tack on real quick to what Councilman Clay and y'all are talking about as far as equipment, and when you, getting back to this on your 5-year capital plan, are you looking at equipment for like Hawthorne Station, 6 West, out on West Fayetteville Road, the Sobersby? Are you planning for that? I mean, I don't know how much equipment. It kind of jumps up to like $1.5 million, and it doesn't really, you've got it for this year. I just, next few years, start, looking at those because
Yes.
the numbers are going to jump like they're talking about.
Yes, we have been planning.
Okay.
I do know we're gonna need some more equipment, possible station for 6 West, and with Hawthorne Station. But I do know in next year, or the year after this budget, we got in place for another Quint ladder truck, and I think another ambulance, if I'm not mistaken. So we need to start discussing and talking about a fire station also over in that area.
Yeah, just keep in mind all those people and businesses that will be coming in. That's the only thing I hear.
Chief, under this call history again, you have a little caption underneath your chart that says, call volumes noted for year 2020 demonstrate a change from firehouse to image trend. Well, I don't know what that means.
That's our reporting software that we store our calls, our incidents in. So
Okay.
we used to we had Firehouse was the incident recording system, and we're with Image Stream right now.
But that
So-
shouldn't change the statistics.
It should not, no.
Well, I guess the note is it because of the change in the software? Is that a part of the reason for the increase?
That's what I'm saying.
No, it
It's
should
not.
not have been.
It should make a difference, Joe.
Well, I mean, I guess 2020 was, the middle of COVID. So is that part of why why it doubled in 21?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
I guess because 2020, we were in the middle of COVID, so could that be part of
It
the
could have been.
doubling? It'd be interesting to see if the other outfits are just to make sure it's not just an anomaly with us.
Okay.
I mean, it might be something to look at, just to make sure we're not, something else is happening. Because that's a double, that's a doubling. And yeah, so.
Additional questions on the supplemental information? Hearing none, we'll move to Fire EMS. Questions on page 1. Chief, I have one.
Yes.
Line 52, 6200.
That's right.
Don't we need training?
Yes, but we moved all of our training into suppression, fire
Okay.
suppression.
All right. Additional questions on page 1?
Chief, is this just you and Ron?
This
Or
is
is
just Ron.
Okay.
So you moved that 50,000 or thereabouts over to fire suppression?
All of the training to fire suppression.
So we're still, what do we call it? The term that, what Union City's no longer doing, the response tier. What did y'all call it? They were letting Grady respond to the calls of a certain threshold of severity.
We're still doing the same thing.
Right, we still are.
Yes, Grady's still the EMS transport provider.
Okay. What was it, Alpha One or something? You had, it
Oh,
was
it's
some,
different calls they go, Alpha, Bravo.
no, but there was a category for certain calls that weren't considered as high of a priority
Yes.
that Union City let Grady handle, and they only handled
Alpha calls.
Alpha call, right,
Double
okay,
calls, yes.
right. So we're still covering all of them.
We respond to them, yes.
Any other questions on page 1?
No.
Moving on to page 2, I had a question on line 54, 7590. What was your request?
That request is for an
Transport
ambulance
rescue unit.
rescue unit.
Transport capable rescue unit. What is that?
Well, that's what we use, that's our EMS truck that
Oh,
we use.
that's-
We call it a rescue, it's an ambulance. And like I said, you know, at this time, we could only transport if it's a life-threatening situation. If not, but that unit normally responds, and it'll provide care to the patient until Grady gets on scene and transport him. But like I said, if it's a life-threatening, cardiac arrest, gunshot, stabbing, then we can put them on our ambulance or rescue unit and transport them to the hospital.
Chief, we ordered 2 this year.
We're waiting on 2, yes, and we
Okay.
ordered another one.
But this one's been, this request was not funded, correct? I'm looking at 7590.
The additional one, this will be 4, or this is 3? This will be 3, yeah, it was not funded.
Understood.
How many do you have, right?
We have 2 on order that we ordered last year, and we're waiting on those to come in. We have 3 older trucks right now that we want to replace.
So if this was approved, how long would it take till next budget to get it?
Probably the way it's going now with the supply chain issues.
Well, next year it's gonna cost even more, right?
I think that's, the cost here is already the increased cost is in this price.
Okay.
Additional questions on page 2.
I guess the next line, 7630, other equipment new. What is,
It's ambulance power stretchers, life pack 15 cardiac monitors, and mannequin.
that's just the regular stuff.
Yes, that's to go on the ambulance. I think we have, yeah, that's to go on the ambulances.
We still dealing with the MARTA issue, I guess, out at closing time.
At
Same.
night?
Yeah.
I think it may have slowed up a little bit.
It's still active, not as active, but we still have a few,
They call it.
especially after midnight. in the morning.
And city manager, just so you know, we got a lot of strange dynamics in the city that go on because we have technically the two MARTA train stations in the city limits, the airport station as well as well, Chief, can you kind of just explain to him what we deal with that, which the other cities don't really have to hassle with?
A lot of times where a lot of the homeless people would come from Atlanta, they'll put them on a MARTA train late at night, right before MARTA shuts down. They used to send them over to the airport.
Chief, I think he lost you in the microphone.
You hear me? Can you hear me?
Can he?
Just speak as if you're speaking to the
Yeah.
public.
And they used to send them to the airport, but they send them back to College Park now, since this is the last. And a lot of people will call 911 just to get back down to the city of Atlanta. So they call with all types of ailments, and we would have to respond. So it takes a lot of our units out of service for running legitimate calls. And that's what's been going on now for the last 2 or 3 years.
You know, the Atlanta airport closes their station at a certain time. A lot of homeless people come to the Atlanta airport just to hang out during the daytime, and at a certain time, they put them off, they close this station and send them to College Park. So we bear the brunt of multiple residents from multiple cities, and there's a certain point, is it in the late at night, after midnight, when the airport station closes, all of those folks end up in College Park. And then College Park, the MARTA station, closes its doors. So they start dialing, dozens of people start dialing College Park 911 for, like he said, a ride back downtown or wherever they need to go. But, you know, some people will game the system to get the lift or get medicine or get pills or get a shot or whatever they need and get a lift downtown on us, where it's not necessarily an actual genuine bona fide emergency. Meanwhile, our residents who may actually have an emergency, they're tied up night after night with this other stuff. So you can kind of see how when we talk about budgeting issues and dynamics that we have, you know, I just wanted you to kind of get a feel for some of the unique things that we have in College Park that the other cities don't have that. So, yeah.
All right, are there additional questions on EMS organization?
I got a question on detail.
All right, go right ahead.
Okay, on the detail, you talk about, and it's just curiosity probably more than anything else. Cardiac monitors, so you're requesting 2, and you have 5 on hand, but you said trade-in. Can you actually trade in heart monitors?
Yes, you can.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Okay.
The monitors that you're speaking of, these are some commercial monitors, defibrillators that only the paramedics have skills to operate and use. So those can be recirculated back into the market for maybe a department that can afford the newer device or the upgraded device.
Oh, okay. Good, thanks.
Any other questions on the detail? Hearing none, we'll move on to Powerline. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, very good.
Did it.
Get out while you can, Chief.
Hey,
He follows orders good.
thank you all very much.
Good evening, Mr. Richardson. How are you?
Very good. How you doing today?
Doing well. Questions on the Powerline org chart? Questions on page 1?
You talked about sales, residential and the like. I know it's not probably going to be in here in terms of, you know, what we're pulling in, but at some point, I want to make sure the city manager has an understanding in terms of the difference between what we're pulling in residential-wise and multifamily-wise, as opposed to the amount we're billing that we're supposed to be pulling in. And we're unique in that sense that, you know, we're with our own, stand with our own and not with Georgia Power. So I definitely want to make sure at some point, you know, he gets an understanding of, again, some of our special dynamics with the monies that we're bringing in that we're not getting.
Questions on page 1?
4112 sales to commercial customers. You expect that to jump to 40 million?
Yeah, that's because of the new contract with the data center.
Oh, okay, okay.
Any other questions on page 1?
I'm good.
Moving to page 2.
Is that the Edison contract, is that the other outfit, not the data mining?
It is
It's
the
part of
current
that.
data center, yeah. We're looking at expanding that, but that's not really in the revenue yet.
Okay. All right.
Moving on to page 2. Questions on page 2?
Nothing on two.
Page 3. Page 4. I believe I had my question answered a little bit later on, but I believe this one is for Ms. Floyd Bradley on page 4. Line 61, 1100. That transfer out, that's going to operating of the general fund, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I got a question back on another page here, just, I think, page 1. The Gas South Alliance,
Yes.
38-1001. So is that completely gone here for next year, this year?
It will be as of June the 30th. They canceled our alliance.
Okay. What happened there? Was that something that,
I don't know. I never got a good answer. There was like a handful of cities that they decided to cancel that.
okay. And just refresh my memory, what was that deal? What was it?
They would give our citizens a 2-cent per therm discount, and we'd get a royalty fee, about $1,200 a month.
And those were residents that had gas and electric, right?
Yes, those that converted or changed to Gas South, and they kept up with a special formula on that. So.
Okay, all right.
Additional questions on page 4. Moving on to page 5.
I think the vehicle replacement, those are the ones we approved earlier.
They already ordered and approved. I put them in there, hoping they might come in this, but they actually were originally a 3-year delivery. So.
Line 53, 70, 91, the last piece here.
What page, Joe?
Oh, I'm 5, were we on 5 of 7?
We're on page 5.
All right.
Page 5 of 5.
5 of 5. Okay, maybe, I got 5 of 7 here. I hope I'm on the right page.
I
Road
think you're in the
signs and-
transaction report. We're
Oh,
not there yet.
okay, we're in the
In
trans,
the detail report.
all right.
Any questions on page 5?
No.
All right. Moving on to the detail. What page are you on, Councilman?
That was page 5 of 7.
Okay.
And, yeah, the signal repair, $41,000, line 7090.
Yeah, that's just repair expense we put in place to repair existing traffic signals.
Okay. Okay. Do we usually spend all of that every year? When we-
It depends. Some days, some years we do. We actually may go over a little bit, but so that's when we come up with that number and kind of stay with that.
Additional questions on the detail?
Like your 5-year plan, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good report.
Hugh, when we have a signal replacement, I know we've had some crashes at Old National and Sullivan Road where traffic signals have been replaced. The pedestrian, Camp Creek and Herschel Road in particular, is notorious for wrecks. One of the last wrecks took down that pedestrian signal. Is that GDOT because it's on the state route?
Yes,
when they have to
GDOT.
replace those, so we don't have to worry about those, it's just ours?
Right.
Okay.
Additional questions on the detail?
No.
Okay, moving on. There's a lot of detail. Power warehouse. Questions on page 1?
No.
Moving on to page 2. It's a pretty straightforward one.
Yeah.
Any questions on the detail?
No questions.
Mr. Richardson. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Moving on to customer service. Good evening, Mr. Scott. How are you?
How you all doing?
Doing well, thank you. Questions for Mr. Scott on his org chart?
William,
No questions.
are you looking for staff in here? Are you
One position.
one position?
Yes, sir.
All right. I remember you mentioned at some point, you mentioned some temps. Do we still have some in the pipeline, or is it all us now, or where are we?
We're needing some support. We're trying to finalize the water meter project.
Okay.
So our billing team, we're almost towards the end, so we need some support with that. So between that and that one position, we still carrying some temps.
Did you put that in the budget here, the support you're asking for? When you say support, another staffer or?
No. Just temporary position to hold us over until, we should be finished hopefully towards the end of this fiscal period with the meter project, if everything goes as planned.
Is that money in here, that request?
It's already in that budget. We hopefully will be done for the.
There is $24,000 budgeted for contractual services.
Okay. All right.
Questions on page 1?
Yes, I've got one on line 515010, and we're at 331 actual that we've expended. I know you said you have a vacancy, but if we add a third to that, that would bring us up to about 441, and yet you've got in for 601.
And under contractual services, I have about $216,000, about $116,000 over budget, and that's because of the temp positions.
So you're saying instead of the contractual services, you're going to go in to our salary people?
Correct. The fund, the savings from salaries.
Okay,
for the
so
maintenance.
that's why, so effectively, our actual amount is higher than it's implied here.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, I'm with you, thank you.
And the same thing with the overtime too, that's gonna go back to normal because you added on the actual 19,000, gonna go back to 5? Because you'll be getting.
Overtime.
Yes, that's what we're
Because
hoping.
you'll be getting the person and not using the overtime as much, I guess.
Yes, sir, that's what we're.
And so you just put it back as what it was last year, okay.
I would ask that everyone just be cognizant of our court reporter's very difficult job and to make sure that we're all speaking at one time and not over each other. Thank you. Additional questions on page 1. Moving on to page 2.
Let's see. Okay, line 5730, see a pretty big increase in equipment here.
Yes, sir, we're gonna reclass that to contractual services.
Okay, so that's part of the $200-something thousand in contractual? Is that what that 80,000, is that part of?
Yes, with North Star, it should be under contractual services, as well as we have a new addition, SageGov, of 26,000. That's a new item for customer service because they will be using part of the software.
Okay, but that's not under that 200,000
Yes.
contractual?
Yes,
That's
yes,
part of that?
that's part of it, yes.
Okay,
And that's where we're reclassing the budget to.
Okay. 60/50, the bank charges. It looks like they're gonna be, well, I guess close to doubling. I know we're not there yet with the 47 that we spent. Line 60/50. So $100,000 in bank charges. We're thinking, wow.
Additional questions on page 2. Hearing none, we'll move to page 3.
Now, I have one on line 547630, other equipment new, and I followed it back to the details, so it's PAYGO. Just refresh my memory, what is PAYGO eliminating? In other words, we are adding that in for PAYGO. Are we reducing costs elsewhere?
PayGo, we're trying to go towards a prepaid billing
Prepaid.
system if
Yeah.
we could. We're hoping that PayGo can overcome some technical issues that we need in order to move forward with that.
Okay, so is anything else going to go away?
We're hoping that it reduces the collections as far as unpaid.
Okay, it'll reduce our unpaid debt, or not unpaid debt, but unpaid collection.
Uncollectible type debt, we basically.
Bad debt.
Bad debt, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
After, do you remember when we had I think the workshop with the outfit that was doing the payment services for, I think just for taxes? And we inquired about if they did utilities.
That was for SageGov. That was the new software. They're still working on that. They're still testing that.
Okay. But at some point, I want to still look into them, because this was the outfit that potentially could do the
That could replace
online
Paymentus.
payments. Yeah. And I know this PayGo isn't Paymentus, but I still want us to keep that in mind, because it sounded like that could be, if they could do what they say they do, that could be some tremendous savings when the contract time comes up. And I don't know, has contract time come up on that one, or?
It's coming up. It is coming up. So we will be, what's the word I'm looking for? We will be looking, just evaluating and looking at other services that could potentially assist us in that manner, but we'll have to wait till we get there.
Okay, I just don't want us to forget about that. 'Cause
No, we haven't.
From what I saw, if we could go from $5-6 charges to $2.50, that's a pretty big deal, if it's possible.
I'm not sure those folks said that was possible.
Well,
Not too-
the outfit that came in here, we asked them some questions in terms of utility payments, what would they run? And they gave us those.
A percentage. It was like 3% based on whatever the collection amount was.
And Paymentus, we were
It
higher.
was a flat fee.
It was a flat fee. Okay, I remember now. Okay, all right.
Additional questions on page 3. Questions on the supplemental? Moving on to meter reading. Questions on the org chart? Page 1.
Hugh, one of the things we talked about with the meter readers, when you came in and you alerted us to the need to look at the power department with your workers' salaries. And we made those adjustments, which I think were very much needed. I was hoping we were including your 3 meter readers as well. And I understand we weren't, but that is something I'd like to see, because I think in fairness in that salary increase, and how many people are in this department?
3.
3 people. I think that they deserved that increase that the rest of your folks got. And city manager, I would like to look at that, maybe put that on the list. We gave a much needed increase to power department crews. And I think it was much appreciated by your folks. But in fairness, I think those 3 meter readers who are part of the power department were inadvertently, I don't think it was on purpose, but I think they needed to be part of that increase as well, in fairness. So I'd like to see that happen if we can make that happen.
Ms. Floyd-Bradley, were the meter readers evaluated as part of our salary survey,
Yes, they were.
along with every other position in the city, correct?
Correct.
All right, thank you. Questions on page 1?
No question.
Moving on to page 2.
No question.
Questions on the detail?
No question.
Moving on to multi-departmental costs. Thank you, Mr. Scott.
questions.
Questions on page 1?
Nope.
Page 1 is the only one.
Page
General
one.
fund revenues.
No questions.
Any questions on general fund revenues at all?
I just have one question. It says flight equipment tax. What is flight equipment tax?
Airplanes, tax on airplanes,
We get-
property tax,
We get property tax on
Delta
Delta's
planes?
airplanes or
Yeah.
whose?
Equipment,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That's our largest tax customer last time I checked, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but I just didn't, I don't know how they count because they're all over the airport and some of it's in East Point and some of it's in Forest Park and Riverdale. and-
We receive a list, I'm sorry, we receive a list of their flight equipment, but yes.
Okay.
And in addition to that, Ken, you know, Georgia is what do they call it, a flyaway state in terms of taxable revenues for airlines. A lot of states allow their aircraft, they can fly them out of the state to avoid taxes and fly them to a tax-free situation. So that's a big chunk of our revenue.
Additional questions on general fund revenues?
Nope.
No, not at all.
All right, then. We're done at 7:26 PM. Have a great Mr. Hawthorne, yes. We're not done at 7:26 PM.
Mayor, I'd just like to have a little discussion on where we go from here. As I understand the process this year as it has kind of unfolded, particularly with the list, it probably is most similar to last year. I'm not saying that whether that's good or bad because I wasn't here, but obviously you got the budget resolved ultimately. But we have been keeping track of the items to be added to the list. Finance Director Bradley and her staff have begun a spreadsheet. Obviously, we'll add to it from this evening. Now, as I understand, with our fiscal year being July 1, you've got until June 30 to adopt the budget, but obviously you have some preset dates, at least informally, as I understand it, of kind of the next steps for your ultimate adoption. But there are further deliberations that are needed from your standpoint, and as you've said, this additional list. And what I'd like to do is come back in a session or two. I don't know how close this is to what you did last year to review that list with you. There's some work that I think staff can do to kind of fill in the blanks with the spreadsheet that the finance department has started. And I'm kind of thinking out loud because I haven't discussed this with Ms. Bradley, but I think it will be important given the various funds and your list hits the different funds for us to do a high-level financial overview of what each of those funds look like in terms of fund balance, retained earnings, and the like, kind of the health, kind of match it up to things that you have put on the list and kind of let that be the order of the discussion, and then with some additional analysis to help you in your deliberations. Now, I'm also hoping, and this is the discussion that I've started with the department heads, as I'm looking closely at the organizational structure overall of the City of College Park, in some details departmentally. So I'm hoping to at least be on a parallel process to address what I'd call, one or two or three of my own list from my early observations that would be a part of those deliberations in the context of potential changes to the organizational structure of the city. And obviously that probably would be a different process for you to approve, but I kind of see it running a parallel course. So I guess what I'm asking is any thoughts that you may have of how you want to see the process concluding ultimately for your adoption, and if you would be open to another session, at least another session, possibly two, to go through the list and organizational structuring ideas.
All right, Ms. Lord Bradley, I saw you had some thoughts about that. So we'll start with you, and then we'll start with Councilman Clay and work our way down.
Monday, we just added to the agenda to go over the list.
Okay, so next Monday?
Monday the 1st. And the 15th is the first hearing, so we can provide that high-level report that you were discussing. That gives us time.
Okay.
So that should work within the schedule that was set.
That answers my question then, Mayor. My staff is ahead of me.
Well, fantastic. Councilman Clay, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the mechanics. Depending on the degree in which you want to change the organizational structure, we've got to map the budget into that new organizational structure. I would like to see that the organizational structure, the new structure, would be in place at the same time we move to the new budget year. So that otherwise we're going to have a really hard time figuring out whether people met their budget or whether what we were approving and so forth. So we've got to synchronize those two and map the budget, and it's going to be, the workload's going to be on you guys to figure out how to move the appropriate budget with each piece of the organization that gets switched around, and then integrate it, reintegrate it. And I don't know that we're going to be, we don't obviously have the time for us to review that and say, yeah, they did that right. They moved part of the police department to the fire department, or I'm being crazy now, but we don't have the time to do that. So you guys are going to have to do a really good job in a short time. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that an organizational change is bad. I just want to make sure that during the coming year, well, at least for me, a half year, during the coming half year, that things match up to the point where we can say, hey, we're really running over budget in this area, and it isn't just because we reorganized, it's because something else has changed.
Yes, all very good points, and I don't want to overreach. So what I'm thinking is that for this year, it will be lower hanging fruit. It may not be the full restructure that could come with next year.
Yeah.
But we are prepared because we've already started
Good.
work on it.
Great.
Yes. But
I
we're not
think
gonna,
that's super.
we're not going to bite off more than we can handle in this short time frame.
Exactly.
Councilman Carn?
I was really glad to hear that, because it's a lot to take in, and piecemealing some of that as we go along and making the tweaks is probably the best way to go at it. Regarding that overview for Monday, I'm assuming that's going to be on the workshop?
Correct.
Okay. I don't know if we already have some stuff lined up for Monday's workshop, but we're going to need enough time to really comb through some of that, a lot of that list, which is pretty significant. So I don't know what you already have, but if you don't have things set up, I would imagine you might want to keep it as cleared off as possible. Then again, I mean, it's important. We want to take care of it all, so I don't mind being here longer for this because it's budget, but let's just make sure we got enough time to take our time and deliberate and go back and forth about each and every issue, because all of those additions are important. Regarding the overview, I would just say keep in mind, we put this list together of things that we feel are really needed. A lot of them are front-facing things that residents can really feel that make a difference in public. A lot of them are part of the infrastructure that makes the public stuff work. But keep one thing in mind, we always have additional funds at the end of the day. This year, according to HR, there was a little over $6 million in vacant positions, unfrozen, money that would have been spent on salaries. So that there's, which rolls over, into the next budget or whatever have you. But there's always money available to do what we need to do. Now, obviously, we won't have that big of a gap with vacancies forever, but even half of that would fund most of what we have on our list, and then some. So I don't mind putting that list together. It's needed stuff. I think the money is gonna be there one way or another at the end of the day. When we start that 23-24 budget, at the end of the day, I don't think we're gonna fill all of our slots entirely. So there'll be money there. I'll just leave it at that.
Councilman Allen?
Okay, as long as we get the list ahead of time where we can have a look at it, and if we have questions, we can get the questions answered before we get here Monday and have a lot of those questions. I just want to, and we don't need to solve them all, like you said, but get a few of the pegs and the right holes and adjust them around. There's always going to be adjustments, as Councilman Carn said, and we can make those as we go along. But when you give us the list, will you give us a list that if we do this, this will have to come out of this fund or that fund, out of the?
Yes, we will try to give you, we'll basically say whether or not we do have the funding available or the funding isn't available, if there's another source which it could be funded from. Because we keep in mind we have to include the $620,000 that wasn't funded, the healthcare insurance increase, so I have to figure out a way to fund that too. So we'll come back with a list based on what we've been discussing during the budget process and try to figure out ways to fund them.
Great, and I'm glad we're looking at some of this the low-hanging fruit, and next year it'll even be more, but you need to get it where you feel comfortable. You're running the city, so great. That's all I got.
Councilman Gay?
The only two comments I have is, one, whatever we can do to always look at increasing our reserve, if at all possible. And I have a question. I had a constituent who contacted me 2 weeks ago and asked me to make a request for funding for an initiative that he had talked with Chief Raj. I think his name is Stanley Muhammad. His project is called Project Torchlight. I did tell him that I would at least bring it up. So would that be something that I would discuss at that workshop?
We would have, yes, we would have to add it to the list. We don't have that item on the list. And what is the cost of that funding?
$100,000.
It's on the list.
Thank you.
Ms. Fleur Bradley, do you think we're going to be able to fund everything on that list?
No,
Why not?
we don't have the revenues sources to fund them. And also, even with the new contractual agreement we have with the county regarding loss, we did lose some revenue there. We lost about $300,000 there. So we won't be able to fund, and including we have the salary study we're trying to implement, and as well as some of the other items that the council is requesting in addition to additional capital that wasn't previously funded.
Yeah. I think we never can cover everything, obviously, but we want to cover as much as we can. Also, keep in mind, one thing I've heard from several departments was that our fees across the board are relatively low compared to our contemporaries in other cities. So I want to keep that in mind as well, and hopefully we get up to at least the median where we're supposed to be in terms of permitting fees and all the different stuff like that. So I want us to also keep that in mind to get those up to where they're supposed to be. We talked about being the size that we are. We've got fewer opportunities for new projects and development because we don't have that much land. So our fees, it's a premium. It's a premium. And I've talked about that through this budget. So let's just make sure we don't forget about looking at raising our fees up to where they're supposed to be.
We did look at some of our fees is, relative to the city clerk's office, Shavela and I. At some point in time, we did review the fees, and we were pretty much on par with.
Yeah, because they're state mandated.
Okay. Well, I wasn't talking about your department, more Sabrina's more than any of them, who said herself several times that we were low in terms of those fees. So
Okay. Yeah, I would have to review those fees to make them.
take a look at it, and that's according to her, you know, with fees and permits. But I would imagine she would know something, you know something about it.
Mr.
All right.
Hawthorne?
Yes, Mayor, just to set the stage and for what I think our session needs to look like. And this is where it's important to distinguish the policy decisions of the city council from administrative staff recommendations, starting with the city manager's recommendations. So I think it will be important as we go through the list to, as Councilman Allen suggested, what are the alternatives? And there are basically three. There's something additional that you want to consider, and there's a majority vote. One is, as was just said, fee adjustments or tax adjustments. That's within your purview if something is important enough. The other would be fund balance. Not recommending that, but I'm just saying that's an option. That's why I think it's important to have that overall summary, high level, easily understandable for each fund that an item may pertain to. And then the third is some reduction elsewhere. Doesn't quite equal to what Councilman Carn said, but one of the things that he said, was vacancies that we know that there probably will be some. But it kind of falls within that family. So as we go through it, and I don't think it has to be, anything that is stretched out. I see a fairly quick exercise that we go through of the various items where we have this set up where you can very quickly scan and see if there are any of those options that you want to consider as we go through the list. But we'll have it refined so that we can be efficient coming this next Monday, but let's be open to the possibility that if we're trying to do it in the context of an hour and a half with other agenda items, that possibly there may be some additional time that is needed. Just to be open.
Can I
Ms.
clear
Ford
something
Bradley?
about that $6 million based on vacancy? What that doesn't take into account are the temp services that are hired in place of those vacancies. And what it doesn't also take into account is when the department needs to transfer additional funds for as far as overtime. You have the fire department over by what, 200 plus thousand in overtime. That does not take that into consideration, and which includes other operating needs that may come up, and they transfer those funds, those available funds for the vacancies. And $6 million, that's not all general fund. Just wanted to put that out there.
Gotcha.
I just had one more question. Are we going to be able to add to, increase our general fund, or are we going to be reducing our debt, which I hate debt, but how do those look with this budget?
Based on what this budget, there's the way you have it budgeted, you're not saving anything to roll into the general fund.
Nothing's going to go into the
based
additional.
on what you have, your budget, your revenues are matching basically your expenditures. So you're, other than those that have contingencies like Hugh's budget, you don't show that you plan on reserving any funds.
May I come in on that? I know that we get our budget audited. It's required by state law. But I've never seen this council look at cost savings. I've seen other municipalities and county governments go as far as to bring in people who specialize in finding savings, and they make recommendations. For example, bid and procurement, purchasing. As I sit here and watch the budget for the last 8 years, I've not seen any savings that go back into the general fund. It always, we spend exactly what we bring in. But I've never been up here and seen this council, previous councils, task staff or task a third party with finding ways that we could save money. I'm convinced, absolutely, that we could save, and I would hypothesize as much as 20% if we were to task ourselves in doing that. That may not be the will of council, it certainly may not be the will of staff. But for whomever is concerned about fiscal, being conservative fiscally and still run our organization, it's my belief that there could be as much as those savings, as well as I don't see us being tasked with more different ways to identify more revenue. I don't see us as an organization that looks for ways to find revenue. And I'll close by saying there are organizations that are much smaller than us with 3,000% more revenue. There are different types of organizations. I know we are a municipality, but the point I'm saying is there, you know, for example, the energy company, that's the cloud, that Hugh wants to, they want to expand. That's an example of going and find other types of revenue that would give us those savings. So I just want us to start kind of thinking along that way as we do our budgets.
Mayor, just a quick response.
Mr. Hawthorne, go right ahead.
The council is welcome to task us to do it, but you've got a city manager who already is tasked to do that. I am going to be looking at cost efficiencies more in the future than I can now. But when I spoke of low-hanging fruit, and I'm not making any commitments or promises because I'm still doing the analysis, but among the low-hanging fruit are potential, not across the organization yet, but potential reductions. I'm probably not talking about a net addition in high-level restructuring that I'm looking at. But my early forecast is I am looking at potential ways of reducing in the low-hanging.
And Councilman Gay, that's something that we don't look at, we haven't looked at often enough in the past. It's a different economic world post-COVID, and we need to look closer at everything. I'll see different departments over the years, city manager, and you know, we do what we do with purchasing. Other departments still will purchase outside of purchasing, of course, and there's some things where I see there's some obvious savings. There's some departments, let's say, you know, they may have parts and materials that they buy each and every year, generally some of the same stuff, for example. And some departments, they'll go down to Lowe's there in East Point and pick it up, the same stuff, dozens and dozens of them every year. Now, you know, in my head, I mean, you know, that's retail. So our systems and whatnot, and a lot of departments, they'll do things in terms of convenience. So there's a lot of stuff and activities that you're going to kind of get into, and the more questions you ask, the better. I know Union City, right, our neighbor, within their financial department, they have a, you know, what you call a comptroller that kind of looks under rocks and savings and stuff, you know. But so there's I mean, I think we need to look at that stuff, and that's why we got you here, so you can put some fresh eyes on this stuff, and I think that makes a big difference. You may be able to eyeball some savings that we've been looking at all the time, but we're looking so close at it that sometimes you can't see it until some new eyes come in and take a look at it. So, yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunities to have lots of great discussions about the city moving forward and being fiscally responsible and making sure that we are also meeting the needs of our residents, our businesses, our visitors. But tonight, we are done. It is 7:50 p.m. and this meeting is adjourned.